just all crap.
I'm like trying to prove people wrong.
If you don't want to use modern tools, you could produce one film a year.
Oh, this is who my daughter brought home.
What's that? It's a bucket.
This naive, bald man is telling me what to do.
Hey, who calling you naive?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Brain Juice with Noah Chrysler. Today, I am sitting down with Epsidoe, who is head of the Futur. Chris, welcome to the show. Can you give me an introduction here?
Yes, Noah. Do or do not. There is no try.
So I previously explained to Chris that he's kind of the YODA figure in my story, right? Because like he planted a seed in my mind that eventually grew into me changing my behavior in a fundamental way, right? And so he's my YODA,
That's the context. In the edit, it'll make sense.
Yeah, oh, for sure it will. So Chris, I have a little bit of a bio for you here, but I think that of all people in this world, you are the person to riff on your bio and give your introduction. So who are you? Why should people care about the words and ideas that come out of your mind?
Okay, my name is Epsidoe, and it rhymes like with cookie dough, in case you're having trouble saying it. I'm a recovering graphic designer. It means I'm a traditionally trained graphic designer who I built my entire identity for my professional life as a graphic designer. So I'm in LA, 1995, start my own company. I get into directing commercials and music videos through this world of motion graphics, working for some of the top agencies and the brands in the world. I do that for over 2 decades, but something doesn't feel right to me. In the meantime, I'm teaching at Art Center, the school that I went to, private art school, doing work that I feel like fills me up. It lights my soul on fire. But the challenge with that is it doesn't pay nearly what I'm worth. I pay freelancers more than what I get paid to be an instructor. So luck would have it that a former classmate of mine from Art Center invites me to start making YouTube videos in 2014. As an introvert, as a person who's used to being behind the camera, this was a very uncomfortable thing for me to do. But he insisted, and he has a way of being very convincing. I decided to make YouTube content with him. Took us about a year for us to figure out what the heck we were doing, but I caught the bug. I caught the bug of trying to create content to help teach people in a scalable way. And YouTube was a perfect platform for that. Eventually, I kind of wind down my agency and I just do this now full time. I'm a full-time content creator. I'm an educator. That's how I identify now. That's why I say I'm a recovering graphic designer.
I love that. Can I ask you a question? What were some of the key insights in that first year? You said we were figuring stuff out. What did you figure out and what did you latch onto? What was that first hook that you realized this is what the people want to see?
Absolutely. The reason why we created content in the early days was because we needed to build some awareness and marketing around a product we were developing or had developed. It was a course on how to do user experience design. So it was content, hook, sell content, and it wasn't really working. We weren't selling courses and we weren't growing our audience. And it just didn't vibe with how I felt. I felt like, God, everything we do, there's an agenda. And so the first time we had this observation, I say to Jose, my former business partner, can we just make content to teach people? We have no products to sell, where there's no pitch, there's no nothing. And you go, yeah, we could do that. And so that episode winds up hooking people into our channel. We went from having 25 views a day to having 125 to 250 views a day, which by today I'd be really sad if that was the case. But back then I was like, oh my God, we're on to something.
Yeah. It sounds like my YouTube channel right now.
It's the journey of every YouTube person. It's just how it is. You first make things and oh my God, 25 people showed up. And the way I like to think of this so that no one wants to throw himself off a bridge is if you were in a room and 25 people showed up to watch you speak for 2 hours, that's an impressive feat.
Yep.
I think we get caught up in all the numbers and that's not a big enough number, but just think about how many humans gave their time and attention, their most valuable, precious, non-renewable resource, and treat it with respect. And that's what we learned. Treat the audience with respect in terms of their time and their attention, because they can watch 1,000 things. They chose to watch you for some reason.
Chris, this is why you're my YODA, because I regurgitate those thoughts and ideas subconsciously, and talking to you and hearing you articulate them so clearly makes me realize your content has infected my subconscious so much that that's my implicit frame now, which is so valuable. And it's so nice, right? There's a podcast where I literally reiterate that point to my audience. I'm like, this episode only has 100 views, but it's so important to me that when is the last time that I've if it had 50 hours of watch time and I was like, okay, if I explained my life journey to people for 50 hours, right? One on one. That's a ridiculous thing, right? So this is like a supernatural feat that I've accomplished, but yet I'm not happy with the result. Like that's crazy, you know? So I don't know. Thank you so much for agreeing to this conversation. You're the best. Okay, let's jump into some of these interview questions. The first one I wanted to kind of start with the story of my journey, and I hope that's cool with you. But
Okay.
so cool. So we met at a YouTube event. And you know, I was kind of carted to this YouTube event to help with networking. And I remember coming up to you. I don't know if you remember this, but I was very nervous to talk to you. And when I get nervous, I talk too much. And so, you know, I'm spastic and I like come up to you and I'm like, hey, and I ask you, you know, I'm like, okay, I probably have a window of 3 minutes here to ask you for some advice. And I go, Chris, earlier in my career, because I had previously quit my cushy job. I was working for a senior living marketing company making like senior living videos, right? You know, oh, the grandmas go and they do
The
whatever, you know.
pinnacle of creativity. You're saying
Exactly. Yeah.
you're at the top of the mountain. Go on.
And like, you know, and I was dating this girl at the time and her mom, like I remember explaining to her mom what I did and just like the look on her mom's face was like, "Oh, this is who my daughter brought home," is like, "Oh, man." And I just like I was like, "Who am I?" And so I just like nuked my life and I tried to build my own marketing agency, okay? I was looking for content that explained how to do this, and I stumbled on your videos, and I watched so many of them. And your ideas combined with like a few other people, Josh Nelson's ideas, Alex Hormozzi's ideas, I kind of like taped them all together into my own approach. And I went hunting and I hit something and I made some money, right? And so you had changed my life, right? The words from your mouth changed my life. And so at this YouTube event, I ask you, I go, hey man, like, does it freak you out a little bit that like your words changed my life, right? Does it freak you out the power that you have over the people that you give advice to? Do you remember what you said to me, or do you remember, or I guess hearing that question right now, what would you say?
Well, I will give you what I'm going to say. Should I do this? What order should we do this in? Should I tell you how I'd answer that versus how you remember it?
You do what feels best for you.
Okay. Let's start there. And then you just do me the honor of telling me what I really said, because who knows what I say
Sure.
when you run into people at a party. Okay. Here's how I would answer this. We have emotional experiences in our life, and until we learn how to codify that experience with something called words, they don't become a memory. And all memories are stories, which are words, and an emotion. And so you don't have an emotion, it's usually like you don't even know what you did. And if you have too much emotion, your circuits get fried. We often refer to that as PTSD. You can't remember. So we need to know that when they say sticks and stones might break my bones, but words can't hurt me, they're 100% wrong, because those are external wounds, but the words that you use to describe your life and experiences determine your joy, your pain, and how quickly you can build on maybe trauma with a lowercase t or uppercase t. And that's why words matter so much. So when somebody comes up to me and says to me, "How do you feel about your words changing someone's world or life?" I said, "Well, thank you. That's what it's meant to do." What I try to do is find the right combination of words, and I use that word very specifically, intentionally, combination, because every person is a lock. And if you have the right combination, you can unlock their mind, you can free them from a limiting belief, and you can point them in a direction that empowers them to be successful, to be happy, to have strong relationships, to be able to talk to clients a certain way. That's what I try to do.
That's so cool. That's so cool because like that's so much of my story too, and it's so wonderful. Like I love this idea of reframing things and helping people reframe them and like and using storytelling. You know what's so funny that I've realized recently is that storytelling and therapy are so tied close together, right? It's like what is your unconscious, subconscious story that you're telling yourself, right? Um and so it's so cool because like I've learned storytelling and I've learned marketing, and so to interview people and to be able to help them kind of shape that story for them, it is mind it's the most rewarding work ever. But cool. So what you told me though during that time is that you explained to me how you view your role as like having a high degree of responsibility, right? Like you view your work, the work of your career, as to like take that responsibility seriously, right? And I kind of framed it as like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, right? That's kind of how my brain filed it away, right? With great power comes great responsibility. That's kind of like how I filed your piece of advice away. And that piece of advice, like it punched me in the gut and I couldn't sleep, Chris. I couldn't sleep for weeks because like I realized, oh my God, I'm in a system right now that has a lot of power and I don't feel super comfortable with how that power is being used. And it ate me alive, right? And so at first I was mad at you a little bit. I'm like, oh, this naive, bald man is telling me what to do.
Hey, who calling you naive? What do you mean
No,
naive?
me,
I'll take.
me,
Oh, okay.
me. You know, I
Oh,
you're not naive at all. You were dead on, right? You were dead on, and that's why I was angry. I was like, damn it, like he's right, and I'm mad. But I don't know. Have you can you tell me a story of like another time that you've kind of like crushed somebody's brain like that? Like, I don't know. Have you done like one of these unlocks for other people? And like how has that been?
one of my favorite stories to share around this was when I was speaking at a conference, a small one. It was a mastermind, around 100 people, high level, accomplished people. And I was invited to talk about personal branding. And they're mostly mortgage brokers, loan officers, and people in the real estate industry. And so it's one of the very rare times when I'm speaking to what I would consider a non-traditionally creative group. And so I was feeling like out of my own skin. I'm like, oh, what am I doing here? Did the organizer make a mistake and invite me to bore people to death or to geek out on Spider-Man and Marvel comics and origin stories only for them to be like, oh, this is dreadful. But something weird happened. I did my thing, and as I was doing my thing, I can just see them leaning in and nodding and reacting and responding in ways that traditional creative introverted people don't do. If you ever spoken in front of creative people, they just sit there. They can't, there's no reaction. It's like everybody's so weird in their own skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you feel like, oh my God, is anybody hearing? But these guys are different. They're reacting and responding. So I'm starting to feel comfortable and I do my thing. And I'm invited to the Sunday brunch. And the event organizers, hey, come. There were a lot of people who had some questions and they wanted to talk to you, but they couldn't. I'm like, cool, cool. I'll eat and we'll talk. And as we're waiting for everyone to file in, this really large man, like large with height, he came over to me. He says, Chris, the things you said got me thinking. I couldn't sleep last night. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he goes, I literally did not sleep a wink. Called my wife, we talked. And he's like, you got me looking internally, introspectively. And I could tell something was going on. And when a big man has that look on his face, I know what's going to happen next. It's going to start crying.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So his eyes start getting glossy. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm like doing the Robin Williams thing, to Matt Damon. It's like,
Yes.
it's not your fault. He goes, I know. So I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. He's like, I'm so sorry. He starts tearing up. I'm like, you don't have to be sorry. We're two men having a genuine emotional experience, and I don't think we should stigmatize that. And he just burst out crying.
Oh.
And I hugged him. And, I'm not a hugger, especially with big guys, because they're a little hot and sweaty. But I pushed
Sure.
through my discomfort, and he cried. And I was just like, if words can shape worlds and have an impact on somebody's life, I don't know how that story ends. I just know how it began, where our two timelines intersect in the sacred timeline. There's something interesting there. Now, people are like listening to this or watching this later, like, dude, there's too many comic references. Tough. Deal with it, people.
Yeah,
Deal.
go learn, go read and watch.
Go
watch
get
some
yourself an
Marvel.
education, people.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, Chris, thank you so much for doing this. You're the best. You're the best guest ever, dude. I love this. This is awesome. Cool. Okay. Spider-Man, before I'm talking about Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, okay?
Okay.
He's like
MCU.
MCU, he's like I'm sorry, not yeah, Tobey
Yeah,
Maguire.
Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Yeah, the OG.
The
Yeah, yeah.
OG, the
The
Sony
OG.
one.
Exactly, yes. He's like he gets bit by the spider, he's having a tough go of it, right? He's in the wrestling competition, right?
Yep.
And he asks his uncle to drive him, and then Uncle Ben, he fails to stop the burglar out of revenge, right? And then Uncle Ben like is bleeding out in the street, and he watches Uncle Ben bleed out in the street, and this deeply traumatizes Toby Maguire, right? And Raimi Universe Spider-Man, and then it causes him to go beat the hell out of the criminals, until he deals with the trauma. Cool. what is your Uncle Ben bleeding out in the street moment? Did something in your life, what negative experience, like, because everybody talks about like, oh, like I do what I do because of the positive experiences. And the more I think about my life, the more I'm like, I don't do what I do because of the positive experiences. I do what I do because of the negative ones. I'm like trying to prove people wrong. I'm like I'm doing things out of spite sometimes, you know, which is bad to do long term, but in the short term, sometimes that's really powerful. So do you have any stories like that from your life where like maybe stuff that like you don't like to talk about because like, and if you're not comfortable with talking about them, that's totally cool. But I don't know, anything you're willing to share with me.
Yes, and I'm going to zoom out and we're going to take everybody to like personal branding storytelling class, okay? We'll do
Okay,
that.
here we go.
When we talk about being the master of stories, you have to master three stories in your life. Your origin story, which is very easy. It's where you were born, who your parents are, their history, your family history, your culture, because there's cultural currency, the cities in which you've lived in. That sets the tone as to who you are and it shapes you. Now, Spider-Man is an orphan. He's raised by his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, who love him dearly. He's a bit of a nerd, pencil neck geek kind of thing. He's picked on and things aren't going well for him. The next story you have to figure out is the inciting incident. The moment your world changes, you're not you yet, but you can never see the world the same way. Most people think when Peter is bitten by the radioactive spider, he becomes Spider-Man. No, that was the inciting incident. It wasn't the defining moment. We'll get to that. The defining moment is somewhere in your life. Usually it's in your mid to late 30s or 40s, and you really figure out who the heck you are. Some people spend their entire lifetime not knowing what their defining moment is. They're searching from moment to moment because they're fairly unintentional. They're they're sleepwalking through their life. You know the line from Dune, "The sleeper must awaken." Different reference there, everybody. So I tell people you're sleepwalking through life. You're not paying attention. So for me, the inciting incident in my life in which my world changes is I'm working at a silk screen company. I'm doing production art, which is I'm literally tracing over someone's drawings with a pen, cutting rubylith, and he sends me on an errand. I'm a gopher at this point, and I'm picking up typesetting. Everybody, this is like really early 90s, maybe late 80s. I didn't know what typesetting is. So I go to this guy's house and knock on the door, and he opens the door, and out comes this guy wearing Hawaiian shirt and shorts, and he's like, "You're early." I'm like, "No, Brad sent me. I'm not early. He just sent me over here." He goes, "Come on in." He brings me into the hallway, shag carpet. I enter and cross the threshold. Literally, I'm crossing the threshold, and I see inside his home office one of the early, like monochrome iMacs, basically the 512K Mac. So he's working on it. I'm like, what is this wizardry that you're doing? I've seen commercials. I've seen him in the showroom, but I've never seen anybody do something other than Mac Paint with this. This is brilliant. He's bending and manipulating type. He's like the master of this universe. I'm like, oh my God. I met for the first time a real life graphic designer who was a professional. Before that point, I always thought that artists were starving people and had nowhere to go but paint portraits at the boardwalk. And so I asked him, like, do you have another job or is this all that you do? He goes, this is it. And he looks at me like, well, you crazy? I said, and you can support your family doing this? Nobody told me this, you know? And this is the moment my world changes because now I know I have direction. This is my radioactive spider moment where I was thinking I was going to be a computer science nerd. I thought I was going to get into development and engineering, software engineering, which I'm not very good at. This is it. My world changes. And then from this point forward, I know I have direction. I'm going to go do this thing. And of course, there's a lot of trials and tribulations. Now, the thing that we talk about here is Peter Parker had the opportunity to stop the person who would ultimately kill his Uncle Ben, the person he loved more than anybody else in the world. But he didn't do it out of spite. He's like, it's not my job. It's your job. And so he discovers later on that the person he could have stopped with minimal effort with great power, he didn't, so he pays the ultimate price. So the reason why he becomes Spider-Man, his defining moment, is because he's like, I have a responsibility. I will never do things out of self-interest again. And it comes at a great cost to him personally and professionally. He's always late for assignments. He doesn't take the photos. He loses the wedding ring to Mary Jane. It's all kinds of things because he's trying to stop the burglar from taking the groceries from an old lady. That's the character with the heart of gold of why Spider-Man, Peter Parker is so relatable to all of us. So the difference between the hero and the villain is they all go through trials, but the villain takes the trial and turns it into trauma, and they hate the world for it. Whereas the hero takes the trial and turns it into a triumph. They make that a triumphant moment for them, and that's what transforms them. Too many T's.
Dude, that just fucking wrecked me. Chris, you're the best.
You all right?
I'm doing great, dude.
Okay.
You just you obliterated me. That's amazing, man. That's a gift. That's a gift. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you thank you so much. Like that's so cool.
You know what? I have to say, every time you have a genuine emotion,
Mhm.
it sounds like you're taking a hit on a joint. Did you notice that? Watch how you talk. Like, Chris, thank you so much. That was so good. And you exhale. It's just a deep inhale when you speak with emotion.
You know what it is? I think it's also that like I've started to like be able to like engage in I've had anxiety my entire life, and I think that I haven't really fully addressed it. And so like recently I've been able to partake in marijuana because I've started to really look at my anxiety and be like, okay, yeah. And so I don't know, I think it just kind of manifests in my day to day, where it's like
So it's chilled you out,
yeah,
but it's also giving you a way of speaking like, yo, that was good.
yeah.
All right, here we are.
I love that.
I just did the copy thing, everybody. You can't see me, but I'm just like, see?
So Chris, in this interaction, the subconscious story is that you're Yoda, and hopefully I'm Luke Skywalker, not an Ewok or something. In the story of your business, right? In the story of your business, how do you envision yourself? Do you view yourself as Yoda in the market? And I guess it's maybe what's the story that you use to in your primary frame, right? Do you think about yourself in relation to your company? Do you think about yourself in relation to the market? Do you think about yourself in relation to the world? First, which one is the most impactful to you and the most useful, do you think? And then second, how does that, what character and what role do you play in that story?
Good question. Very complicated question to answer. To be honest with you, I don't really think of myself too much like that. I'm just wildly curious, and I allow myself to follow my curiosities, my passions. And I was just telling a buddy of mine, I don't play things to play things. I play things to win. I do things with a level of intensity and obsessiveness. And he goes, no kidding. So I downloaded a game. Okay, I don't want to do free promotion, but I downloaded a game. There's an ad. I saw it. I'm like, let me check this out. I downloaded it. I've already spent like $200 on a stupid game.
Yes.
Right.
Sick.
So I'm just putting it out there. I don't even like the game. I'm just in it because he's like, what are you doing? You slaying dragons? What are you doing? I'm like, you don't understand. I need to understand the mechanics, how it works, the reward system, what the rules of engagement are, quite literally and figuratively. How are they hooking people in? Because I want to understand this. And I'm going to take it to a point of near burnout. Like every morning I'm on it, like I'm on the toilet, I'm on it. I just need to figure this thing out. And eventually I stop. So I have a history of this. So when I'm into skateboarding, I read all the magazines, I watch all the videos. When I was into mixed martial arts, I went on eBay, bought VHS cassette tapes of the first UFCs, the first 10, because I wasn't able to watch them on pay-per-view. Then I attended events. I like doing this because I want to experience life fully and with deep passion and intensity. It's like the Rutger Hauer line. Another Rutger Hauer line, the Terrell, it's like the candle that burns twice as bright, burns twice as fast. I'm good with burning twice as fast because I don't want to take an experience and then dilute it across a long timeline. So that's how I see things. Now,
I love that.
movie references, not so much Yoda, because that's too self-important. I think it's okay for you to say that, but I don't want to think of myself like that. I think of myself more as Kang. I think his name is Kang, not from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the TV show Kung Fu with David Carradine.
Okay.
You ever watch that?
No, I will.
So there's a history here. So Bruce Lee came up with a concept where he's a traveling kind of nomadic person living in America, like East comes to West, like a man out of town. And he goes through the West and he's going and experiencing things and using his martial arts and his philosophy to teach the world. That's a great idea. We're going to cast a white guy to pretend like he's Asian, which made no sense to me. David Carradine is a pretty white dude. So he's on a quest to find his brother. He's going from town to town. That's the premise. And he imparts kind of Eastern philosophy and wisdom, and he's a Shaolin master. I kind of look at it like that. Like I'm going into town to town, and I'm going to try to do as much as I can in the time in which I can do it. But adventure calls me, and I go into the next thing. So hopefully the people that I get to meet my interactions leave some kind of mark that allows them to be a little bit better, even if it's 0.1%, I'm good with that. The sad thing about Kung Fu is in every relationship, he helps people in tremendous ways and they become very attached to him. But he says, I must go find my brother. So he just leaves town. And that's how these serial television shows work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's the what a wonderful metaphor. That's so cool. Like, I what I've tried to tell my team is like I have this thing called cheesy broccoli, right? Like all content is cheesy broccoli, right? Like you want the marketing to look like, oh my God, the cheese is here, right? I told them it's like we're gonna make Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. My vlog is gonna be Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but it's gonna look like Vegas, okay? It's gonna be like, oh, like what crazy thing are they doing today? But you're gonna leave with something that's like, damn, like, I should call my mom. Like, that's kind of what I want, right? So I love that like your thing is like I'm an adventurer who is communicating like Eastern wisdom to these villages, but then I have to go, right? That's such a beautiful way to look at your life. Is that a decent summary of what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
Or
Like he's a transient. He moves from place to place. He tries to do as much good as he can. Usually solves the problem, upsets the balance of order in terms of like making the right things right and getting rid of the wrong things, kicking out the outlaws and the bandits and the bullies, stuff like that.
hell yeah, that's so cool. I love that. Um, This question is judgmental. Let me see if you are
Okay.
offended and don't want to talk to me after it. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Do you feel like you had to build a version of yourself that people would accept before they could really hear your ideas? Do you think that you've manufactured an identity that like that then allowed you to connect with people? Is that how you
Yeah,
conceptualize it?
yeah. I'd answer that question yes and no. So early on, I put my producer hat on working in TV, and I consume a lot of content. I teach storytelling, sequential design. So Jose and I are like, we're gonna make content. I said, you know what works? Polarities. If we're two of the same people speaking about the same thing, there's no point for both of us to be on the show. So you're the free-spirited hippie guy, which he is, drugs, tattoos, barefoot, eats food off other people's plate. I'm like, you're that guy with a full beard and whatever. Like he'd pick something out of his beard and eat it. I'm not saying he would do that, but maybe. Okay. And there I am consistently showing up every day running a company for 20 years. I'm like, I'll be the suit. I said, you know the TV show The Odd Couple? Oscar and Felix. One was really buttoned up, OCD. The other person was just super sloppy and just free spirited. They needed to learn things from each other. So I'll show up like that. I'm like, I just need an excuse to wear a suit. So that part of it was guided or manufactured, but that is who I am. It's not me. So we would do that and we would play off this thing. And he's like, Chris, man, you need to relax. You're working too much in the corporation. I'm like, yo, Jose, we need to make money. We got to get serious about this. This is how you do these kind of conversations. And I think for a while that chemistry worked really well for our audience. They got to see two very different perspectives look at a similar problem. 10% of the time we would just totally agree, but that's not the interesting thing. Eventually that became our downfall because we played our characters so well, like the extremity of who we are, that we started to argue on camera, live, in front of people, and it just got a little bit toxic. So eventually we're like, we're not doing this anymore. I'm just going to do my thing. And so I'm going to be who I really am, which is I can be free spirited. I can be loving and emotional. I can tell great stories, but I can also be super responsible and say, did you pay your taxes, guys? Are you making enough money? Are you taking care of all of your responsibilities as an entrepreneur? And I could play both roles. And that's when I'm like free. And it didn't take that long to do that. But the answer is no, I didn't manufacture somebody to be liked or accepted. I was just thinking about from the point of view of like the overlap isn't interesting to people. We have to push ourselves to the edges. And that got tiring for me. So I'm like, I'm kind of done. I can play both roles.
Beautiful. What a cool. That's so cool. I love that. That's so cool. Wonderful. I do you think that your approach is rare? Like, do you think that other people think about content in the ways that you naturally seem to think about them? Like, I know your approach is kind of specific, but like you're talking about like, I mean, okay, so I do improv comedy a lot, right? And I love comedy. I've studied comedy for like 15 years, right? Like taking notes on television shows and stuff like a weirdo, right? And so like I think about, like comedic dynamics naturally, intuitively, right? I think about, okay, like who's the straight man and who's like the wacky dude, right? Like, um, like Pirate Robot Ninja is one of my favorite comedy frameworks and stuff, right? Do you think that like your approach where like he's going to be the hippie and I'm going to be the suit, do you think that other content creators do that? And if so, which ones do you think do that successfully?
It's hard for me to say what other people do because I don't know. I can only give kind of like hearsay, kind of third party observations, and I don't know. But I do know the ones that don't work, we don't watch. So
Hmm.
two robotic dudes who are super analytical, or two hyper excited, emotional women, or whatever it is. Those are stereotypes. I'm sorry. If they show up and it's like there's too much overlap, what we see are examples of what works, and so we're going to tend to go towards that. There's an observation I've had. I'm a big boxing fan, and HBO box office, home box office, is where they really began doing boxing matches, and they have a broadcast team of three. It's always the same three types of people, not the same person. Number one, we have Jim Blampley, who's like the color commentator. He's great because he's super smart. He has a great vocabulary, and he tells the story of what we're seeing. Because two guys doing this to each other, not that interesting. But the way he brings it to life is like he's pawing at him, saying, "Come on, is that the best you got?" I'm like, "Is that the best you got?" So he's breathing life into the story. Then we have Larry Merchant, who's the color commentator, a little bit older. He would ask the questions that would be super polarizing. So oftentimes this role is done by comedians because they kind of like, "Oh, did he just take a crap in his pants?" It's like the color the play-by-play guy doesn't do that because that's unprofessional, but the color commentator is saying things the audience is thinking about but they can't say. The last person on the broadcast team is the former world champion. They're not necessarily the most well-spoken, but they have experience and they can tell you what it's literally like to get punched in the face and not want to get off the stool, right? And so that makes a beautiful dynamic. And if we see those examples, you can say, well, which one of the three am I? Am I the play-by-play guy who's really good with analytics, research, history? I can tell stories. Or, you know what? I'm top 10 in the world at doing this thing. I'm a former Olympic medalist, and I can give that perspective, and people show up for that. Like David Goggins is one of those people, right? He's top 10 in the world at doing what he does. So he may not even say profound things, but because of who he is, what he says carries a lot of weight.
Sure.
That's why former heads of state, presidents, or people who are best-selling authors carry that with them because, like, well, you've achieved something most of us can't. The hardest role probably is the color commentator because you got to have a lot of personality. You have to be quick-witted. You have to be a little bit fearless to say whatever it is that you are going to say without risk of like, well, I'm going to get canceled. Yeah, but that's your personality. You can't help yourself. So think about that. If you're making content, especially in a team of two or three, which roles do you play? Because overlapping roles are not that interesting.
I love that. I think that that is some of the best advice that like you could give to a creative person. Like that's amazing. And I'm going to my whole team is going to listen back to this interview a dozen times and we're going to write down everything that you said and we're going to apply everything. I want you to know that.
High
Cool.
or sober?
Both, I think.
The first time sober, the second time maybe high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
try
Like, you know, I don't
it.
know. And you know what? It's so liberating to just like acknowledge that like that is how like I want to live my life, like, because I'm gonna make content like with my parents and stuff, right? I'm making a vlog and I'm making a vlog about my life. And so like I need these people to accept that like, hey, I'm a little bit weird and I'm a little bit angry and like, so like the mask needs to come off and you kind of need to be like the same person to everybody. And so
Yeah.
to admit to like my parents who are probably gonna watch portions of this, like, hey, yeah, like sometimes I do a little bit of drugs and it really helps with creativity, right? Like, and it helps with mental health stuff. Like, that's super cool and nothing hard, just the fun ones. Like,
Well, let me tell you something here.
sure.
We're living in a time where content is questionable whether it's human generated or AI generated.
Hmm.
And the way that the large language models are trained is to do the average, not too crazy, not too here, just right in the middle. So when you show up being average to be accepted, you're almost signaling to other people, I might be artificial intelligence. That's not what you want to do. Sally Hogshead has this excellent line, which is it's different is better than better. Most of us are trying to be better when we should be spending our time trying to be different. And we don't have to try to be different. We just have to be ourselves. So if you are into like Hawaiian shirts, if you like to smoke pot, if you got a like mean beard, you just do that. You just be you because the machine doesn't want to do that. It
Hell
wants
yeah.
to be the most sterilized, homogenized version of content ever.
Can I ask you a real question? This is a
Yeah.
real question that I could use some help. Okay, some people I'm trying to start a YouTube circus. That's kind of how I conceptualize of my vlog, right? I'm like, hey, because David Dobrik made a circus. People don't understand that he made a circus, okay? And he's the ringmaster, okay? And he did it in a way that is kind of like ethically devoid, in my opinion. But like, I'm trying to be like, hey, come join my circus, right? And that's kind of the message that I'm sending out into the market, my local market around here, right? It's not just a circus; it's Mister Rogers' Neighborhood dressed as a circus, right? But that's what I'm trying to do. I've had a few people respond to me, and they're like, "Well, I don't like your usage of AI," and my response to that is like, "Oh, okay, like fuck you, like you don't want me to make you famous, okay? Like you're gonna save me some effort, like but like this is a piece of feedback I get all the time where it's like AI is unethical. It was made with stolen stuff. Like, it's devoid of creativity and whatever. And I think that a lot of those criticisms are valid. But that said, I think that this technology is like it's like our housing bubble in 2008, right? It's the 2008 housing, like, or I guess before 2008, because that was when the crash came, right? But it's like this is the opportunity for my generation. That's how I'm starting to see this, right? Where it's like I don't know how to draw or paint, but like if I work hard enough at prompting this thing, I can make something that's fucking awesome, right? Like that's super cool to me. So I don't know. Do you have any advice for me to like just follow that instinct, or do you disagree with that? Do you think that that's a bad instinct, that like using these tools to make art is bad? Because you're an artist, so I want to hear what you have to say about this.
Okay, we're gonna get real on this one.
Here we go.
Number one is if you use tools that people don't like, my reaction wouldn't be go F yourself. My whole thing would be you're invited to follow whoever you feel like you should follow and you consume whatever content you want. It's as if they're a candidate, like there's like Ford and Chevy guys in terms of trucks. Like, well, we can't cross that line. I drive a Chevy because my grandpappy drove. It's like, okay, but you can't tell me how to live.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you happy, you do. And I'm in alignment with what I want to do. So if you use a Canon camera or Sony camera, well, whose business is it to tell you what camera to use? Now, let's look at this. Okay. Do you shoot on film?
No.
Right. And what I would ask the audience is, why don't you shoot on film? Well, because digital is cheating, isn't it? And do you splice on a bed the film that you didn't shoot and tape together how this was done? And a lot of traditional film editors, not a lot, some still edit this way. They want to put it through the machine and they like spin up the reels and like, okay. And they're just in love with analog. It's cool. You do you. And so I know a lot of people frowned on using digital technologies to make their process faster and easier. And yes, it democratized the process, which they don't like because now they have a lot more competition. And then it gave untrained people very powerful tools to do horrific things. But ultimately, all that stuff settles out. So whenever there's new things, new tools that empower humanity, we owe it to ourselves to try to investigate it, to use it, to see what our real opinion is about it before we just summarily dismiss it. And we're doing ourselves a disservice. Now, I have no horse in this race. If you don't want to use modern tools, I'll just say modern, then that's your thing, your jam. You could produce one film a year on 35 millimeter film and spend $160 million. That's on you. That's totally cool. But there's a lot of people on the internet shooting things with their iPhone, putting out a video or two a day, and they're learning at a rate in which probably the film people, the celluloid film people can't do. To each their own. So I'm like, when people are like, Chris, I don't like this about you. I'm like, well, so here's the thing. I'm not going to change. So your choice is not to watch this anymore.
Yeah.
No gun to your head, free will and agency and all. You do you. And I'm totally cool with that. And I understand that that's going to alienate some people. Now, in terms of ethics and the legality of all this stuff, if you're not a Supreme Court justice, if you're not somebody who's a lawyer who's going to litigate, and you're not financed by large corporations or consumer protection agencies, seeing a problem that you can't do anything about and complaining about it, it's just self-inflicted wounds. I don't think that's a good use of your energy or your time. Focus on the things that you can change, the things that you personally can do. Here's another thing. I listened to this on a podcast a long time ago. Some really smart podcasts I listened to. They talk about what is natural. The idea of natural is like purity. But what we think of natural is not really natural because we're living in things that are not natural. We're wearing things that are not natural. If we were, we'd be walking around naked in the woods doing the most natural thing. And so what we're not looking for is natural. We're looking for some version of optimized living that doesn't feel like it's not sustainable. So if you use an editing tool, that's software that you didn't write. Using sometimes intelligent technologies to remove wires or to clean up the background or to cut something out, which is very labor intensive. We don't want to do that. There used to be people's jobs to rotoscope out things. And people who are so anti-AI are using those tools today that are benefiting from it without even realizing what they're doing. So it's just a gradient. There's a line here that we all slide back and forth. We'll say, well, hurting small children, not good. Being a racist XYZ, not good. But, you know, I'm going to use the latest tools to help me tell stories that are better.
Yeah.
My decision. So if you don't like it, don't consume it.
Yeah, kick rocks. Yeah. I like that. If you, no, that's different than kick rocks. It's if you don't like it, don't consume it. That's a good frame.
That's it. I'm not angry at you.
Yeah. I think that my brand, the way my brain works, at least in the era that I'm in right now, is that like I'm filled with more anger than that, right? Like I'm like, you know, if you don't like it, then screw you, you know? And I think that that works for my tone, you know? It just does. Like yeah. There's a friend of mine who's a therapist, and she's like she when she originally started talking to me, she goes, "You ever seen Inside Out?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "You ever notice that like the fear emotion is in control of your control panel?" And that really fucked with my head. And I'm like, "Oh God." And she's like, "You know who I really like?" And by the way, this person's name is Emily, and she's fantastic. And she knows what she's doing. You know, you ever meet those people where it's like I kind of feel like I'm just kind of like freeballing all the time, where I walk into things and I say the first thing that pops into my mind, and that's how I move through the world. This girl is more, you know, she's moving chess pieces, you know, and it's so cool. But she's like, you know, I really like Lewis Black. You know, Lewis Black, his anger is in control of Lewis Black, and he's funny, right? He's mad and he's funny. And so she kind of unlocked that for me. And it's like, wait a minute, I think I'm way funnier when I'm pissed off, right? Like but that's fire that like fire burns, right? So you can't burn the wrong people, and you can't burn it down, right? But fire is also great, you know? So I don't know. That's one conceptualization there. Cool. Let's move on. We got 9 minutes, and I don't want to hold you past 3 because you took time out of your busy life to come and do this. And I genuinely appreciate it so much. So thank you so much. Let's find a good question in here. What is the hardest lesson that you've tried to teach people that they just do not seem to understand? Is there anything that you find that you're like, man, I've tried to explain this 3 times and nobody's getting it? Anything like that?
There's 1,000 things like that. I'm trying to like sort through what the most important one is.
Wonderful.
Here's what I know about people. We get addicted to the idea of progress and change. What we should get addicted to is taking action. If we did that, we would be much better off. So people pay me decent amount of money for some people, it's all like a freaking unreasonable amount of money to advise them on what to do. I listen to the story. I kind of figure it out. I've seen the problem many, many times before. I'm like, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Let's say, for example, stop eating Twinkies. Let's say they're dying. I'm like, the Twinkies are killing you. Like, yeah, is there another way we can do this? I'm like, probably, but you asked me what is the most effective thing to do, but you want to just keep eating Twinkies. So I don't know why you're wasting your time and your money by talking to me, because I'll tell you the most efficient thing to do. That's the problem most of the times. Or they'll say, well, Chris, what proof do you have that eating Twinkies will be the result? So they're looking for reasons not to take action, when in fact, just take action and you'll improve your life in ways that you can't even fathom. And I'll tell you this, if you adopt this principle of doing things faithfully as instructed without questioning it, you'll do so much better in life. So the trick then is to pick who you want to take those instructions from. Now, I know it's had a little resurgence, but I grew up when I was watching The Karate Kid in real time in the theaters. And I like to tell this story, okay? Daniel LaRusso's little kid moved in from out of town, raised by a single mom. And he's in a place where there are rich kids, mostly white, and he's whatever, he doesn't fit in, and he's getting picked on, he's getting his ass kicked all the time. And then eventually he gets chased to this place during the Halloween, and He's getting thrashed. And this old Japanese man, petite, walks out, does his martial arts and busses everybody. So Daniel's like, teach me that. He goes, no. He goes, please teach me this. I need to learn because I'm getting destroyed out there. And he says to Daniel's son, I'll do this under one condition. Do you remember what the condition is, Noah?
Oh man, it's given me Fight Club, you know, when they make him
No,
stand
no, no.
outside. I don't. It's like it's wax on, it's wax on, wax off.
No,
I know he
that's
kind of
it.
tortures him.
Yeah,
He
okay.
tortures him
He does.
with menial tasks. I don't remember exactly what the condition is though.
See, I do. Here we
Okay.
go. He says to him, you must do everything I say without question. And Daniel's super desperate. He's like, yes, I'll do that. And he's like, you'll do everything I say without question. He goes, yes. Okay. Training starts tomorrow. He shows up. I'm ready to start learning karate. He goes, okay. What's that? It's a bucket. Wash the car. But he has very specific instructions. You know, wax on, wax off, and then paint the fence, paint the fence. And then Daniel is doing what he can faithfully. And he's sitting there thinking, my God, this old man has tricked me to do all his dirty work. I'm not learning anything, and he's had it. So he goes up to Mr. Miyagi and says, Mr. Miyagi, you told me you would teach me, and you haven't taught me anything. He's so angry, kind of like the independent American kid doing his thing. And then it's Daniel, wax on. And he goes and hits him. He blocks a punch. He goes, wax off. And he does this, and he's been learning the entire time. Now, there's something to this, because I believe almost all movies and stories were written to teach you a lesson. The problem is most of us are too blind to see the lesson. We get caught up in the light and the shape and the color, and we're kind of mesmerized by it. But the lesson really here is pick your master, learn as best as you can. And when I share this with people, they're like, Chris, there's a Japanese concept that details this exactly. I'm like, why am I not surprised? It's called shu ha ri, that there are 3 phases of learning. Shu, which is the phase of doing things as closely as possible to the way that you're taught, is the most important step. Ha is when you go and start to incorporate other masters into what it is that you're learning. And then Ri is when you improvise and make your own martial art. That's like what Bruce Lee wound up doing with Jeet Kune Do. He was learning Wing Chun, and then he incorporated other ideas, and then like jujitsu and everything else, and he taught his own form. What I find especially prevalent in the West is this independent learner who doesn't want to learn the way they're instructed. They want to get to the improv part really fast. Now, you are an improv comedian, and you realize we all want to do the fun stuff, but you have to do foundational stuff. It's all the fundamentals, the dribbling, the shooting, the fakes, and all that kind of stuff that's really boring that no one wants to do. But you never get really good. You just want to color outside the lines all the time.
Interesting.
So this is the mistake. Every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, here's what you need to do. Like, yeah, but can we do something else? But what if I did it this way? And then later on, they come back to me and they're like, Chris, I did what you said and it didn't work. I'm like, tell me what you did. I'm like, you chose very selective things to do that I said, which were the least important parts of what I said. And you chalk that up as, I did what you said. I think this is why I'm going to get in trouble for this. Why America is falling behind in some areas, because this independent pioneering spirit that we have, which was the foundation of this country, is the very thing that makes us really bad students.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, we're called kind of arrogant, and then like when it blows up in our face, like it's wrong. Yeah, that's beautiful. We've got 2 minutes left, but okay. I want to hear what you think my paint the fence is and what my wax on, wax off is. And I will say that I think that like you're probably familiar. The foundation of my career, my school essentially gave me $10,000 to go try to build a YouTube company. We started by trying to make kind of like a vlog type of a thing. And then we pivoted. We pivoted to trying to understand the masters, right? We tried to understand, this is how Rhett and Link do it. This is how Casey Neistat and David Dobrik do it, right? This is how Mr. Beast does it, right? This is the storytelling principles they use. So I think that the way I'm conceptualizing of my story is I think I'm ready to hit the third beat of like the improviser.
Oh, I see.
That's kind of how I think about it. That said, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I think though that I'm in my paint phase. Like I feel like Bob Ross and I see a big open canvas and I got a big brush and I'm ready to roll. That's kind of how I see it. But if you think I'm wrong, please let me know the fundamentals. That said, I also have a team of people that probably might not be in that journey too, right? So your advice on studying the fundamentals might be very useful to them if it's not useful to me, which probably it's very useful to me too. So what do you think the fundamentals are in your last thing? And I don't want to hold you up, so I apologize if we go over.
No, no worries. The fundamentals for anybody trying to create vlog style content and bring some entertainment and some values and storytelling to it is you got to go through this period where it's just all crap. And you have to go through the repetitions. I noticed this thing. I play tennis once in a while in a blue moon, but my wife plays almost every single day. And the tool that the coaches use, which is like the tennis cannon, it just keeps shooting balls at you, is because you're getting in like years of experience in days. You're hitting 1,000 balls and you're going to start to have muscle memory and you're doing this. But when I'm playing tennis, we're fooling around. Oh, the ball is in, it's out. And you might hit the ball 80, 100 times, whereas you're literally going to hit it probably over 1,000 times with the machine. That's what we all need to do. We got to go through this. So I would say, because I don't know your content well enough to say this, is find a format that works for you, study it dutifully, figure out the hooks, the framing, the camera work, lensing, do the best job you can. And this is going to sound really weird, to rip it off as closely as possible.
Sure.
This is part of that independent idea again. If it's a Western idea that, oh, I'm just ripping things off, so I'll do it this way. But what you did sucks. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this, but in the world of art, the best counterfeiters have incredible intelligence. They're very high IQ because they can do that disciplined work that fools the experts.
Yeah, I listened to you talk about how you forged a report card, and you literally
Yeah.
took a lead pencil and you filed down the lead until it was the exact width of the other lettering in your report card. That's amazing. I love that story.
That's me
Um,
in junior high, okay? Or high school. I can't
hell
remember.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's sick.
forgery. Tracing over the letters, like practicing, is it right? And then damaging it. The Catch Me If You Can with
Love it.
Leo DiCaprio, same
Yeah.
thing. He's like figuring things out. So what you want to be able to do is to mimic something so close, you cannot differentiate it from the master. When I was teaching at Art Center, one of the assignments we had was because they would ask me very technical, very difficult things to do, and I didn't know how to do it, so I flipped it on them. They would say, I'm really inspired by this person's work. How do you do that? I'm like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Everybody, would it be meaningful to you if you knew how to design frames that look like your heroes? Everybody, next week, I want you to bring in 5 examples of the best looking work, still frames. They're great. You like that one? You're like, okay, great, great. Pick the very best one. I'll teach you how to do it. Like, okay. So they showed it to me and said, okay, next week you're going to show me how to do it. They're like, what? Reverse engineer it. And you know what? In 2 weeks' time, they were able to create a frame, not all of them, that I could not tell which was the original. Now, they weren't copying the exact same frame because the rule was you can't use any assets from the original frame. But imagine if there were frame 2, 3, and 4, it should be indistinguishable. They were so good that when I was critiquing the work, oftentimes I would critique the original as what they did. And they were smiling. And I'm like, what? Like, no, my work's that one.
Hell yeah,
You've passed.
that's sick.
You fooled me. So
That's
that's
awesome.
what we're talking about in the shoe phase. Be
I
able
love that.
to replicate it so it's so close. Here's the really good news. As you do this enough times, you'll start to see ways that you can improvise and tweak so it matches who you are. But
Hmm.
don't be in a rush to get to that phase. That'll happen naturally.
Hmm.
And then you copy another format and you copy another format. And you're like, what if I brought these 3 things in? Then you would be in the re-phase. And that's when you start to develop your own style of communication, which the world will reward you for it.
Beautiful. I sound arrogant, but I really do think I've done that. Like in college, I was doing like vlogs, and then I was doing like, down the barrel. Then I was doing like comedy analysis. Then I was on stage doing improv, doing sketches, right? Then I was writing comedy in Atlanta, right? Studying joke structure, learning comedy classes, writing down jokes every single day, looking at my favorite comedians, taking notes compulsively, right? So I do feel like, and it feels like arrogance almost, right? And that's a core struggle of
No, I
mine
don't
is
think
like,
so.
wonderful. That's a core struggle of mine, though, is right. It's like, man, if I believe in myself, is that narcissistic, right? Is it narcissistic of me to be like, I think I know how to do this, you know? but I think I just need to step into it because I think I've been like building towards this my whole life. That said, I think my team, as they listen to you, because I tell them this, I'm like, hey guys, go listen to Chuck Palahniuk, right? Because he knows how to tell a story that will melt your brain. Okay. If you learn and take notes on how he melts your brain with a story, and then you edit my videos, I guarantee you, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how well you know how to use Premiere. Like if you know what needs to go in there, you'll figure it out, right? Because Chuck Palahniuk tells his story by saying, here's the character, here's why the character is important. He uses characterization. Then the character does something horrible, right? And then everybody feels away as a result. If we know that if we know that that's the Bob Ross completed masterpiece, right? Then that's okay. We can get there, right? We can get there. But unless you have an understanding of why the masterpiece has the shading underneath the trees, and you're never going to be able to just intuitively do that without understanding the masterpiece of somebody else. So that's what I've been trying to communicate to them. So I don't know. Chris, thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate you so much. Someday soon, hopefully we can have a conversation in person and I'll travel out to meet you and hopefully this story will develop in 6 months and I will come see you when my life's a little bit different. How about that?
Sounds good. Will you be at VidCon?
I should be. I want to be.
Be
I don't know
there.
how do I get there? How do I do it? Where is it? And do I have to bug somebody for a ticket? Maybe I shouldn't ask you that question. I can figure those questions out.
Yeah, I think it's in Anaheim, as it's
Okay.
all in Anaheim, I believe. And there's a lot of ways to get in. You either buy a ticket, you can crash the parties, someone can invite you, you can be a speaker,
Hell
lots of
yeah.
ways. But the ticket price is not much.
Beautiful. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll be
Chris,
there. I'll be speaking.
beautiful. I will figure that out and I will see you then and we'll maybe have a conversation then. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end this recording.